All right, welcome back to our lesson on biogeochemical cycles. You should have already done the first part covering the carbon cycle and the nitrogen cycle. In this section, we are going to cover specifically the phosphorus cycle and the water cycle. So we're going to start up with the phosphorus cycle, which outlines how phosphorus, which is a critical nutrient, cycles through Earth's ecosystems. So for the sources of phosphorus, it's going to primarily be released through the weathering of rocks and minerals. A lot of the other nutrients that we look at, they cycle through more biotic factors, through living things, but phosphorus is going to be more of a mineral. So it's coming from rocks and minerals. Phosphorus is not present in the atmosphere as a gas. So the ultimate source of phosphorus atoms, again, is rock. We are not going to see that cycle go through the atmosphere at all. And phosphorus compounds are released by erosion, and then they become dissolved in water. Plants use phosphorus to construct necessary molecules, and animals gain necessary phosphorus when they consume plants or other animals. And then decomposers recycle phosphorus compounds back into the soil. So it's never being exhaled, breathed out, anything. It is just sticking to either in a living thing or in the ground. So for the human impact on phosphorus, because plants need phosphorus for most of their cells, we include phosphorus in fertilizers. So fertilizers are primarily going to be nitrogen, which we just talked about, and phosphorus. So excess phosphorus in fertilizers leads to runoff, which causes water pollution. And then there's also detergents that contain phosphates, which contributes to eutrophication in bodies of water, which again, we had talked about in that last lesson. And eutrophication is when you have too many nutrients in a body of water and you get a lot of algae and a lot of plant growth, and it outcompetes all the other living things, and not great for a healthy ecosystem. So the consequences of us disrupting the phosphorus cycle is water pollution. So elevated phosphorus levels harm those aquatic ecosystems, and then also algal bloom. So you can see in this picture, we have like pretty clear water in the middle, but we can see the green kind of swirls coming off the sides. Those are algal blooms. And algae can be great because it's contributing oxygen to that aquatic ecosystem and also to the atmosphere around us. But remember that too much algae, too many plants in the water can still outcompete fish because eventually they're going to die, they have to be decomposed, and that also is going to use up all of that oxygen. So this is what the phosphorus cycle might look like. So if we're starting over here in our mountains, these are our rocks, we have geologic uplift and then weathering by water. So it rains, that breaks down that rock, and then it dissolves into this body of water, this river here. That can also then sediment down to the bottom and create new rock. And then animals or plants are going to take up that phosphorus through the soil. The plants and animals then die. The detritus or the detrivores, the organisms that break down dead things, are going to decompose them. It's released back into the soil and can end up back in the water. And it cycles over and over and over again. All right, last but certainly not least is going to be the water cycle. So the water cycle illustrates the continuous movement of water between the Earth's surface and the atmosphere. So for water reservoirs, we're not calling them sources because they're just kind of holding big bodies of water, are going to be oceans, which contain most of Earth's water, rivers and lakes, which are surface water bodies that hold fresh water, and then groundwater, which is water stored underground in the aquifers. So for the water cycle processes that you need to understand how the water moves through everything, the first is going to be evaporation. So evaporation is when water turns into vapor and rises into the atmosphere. Condensation is when that water that has risen into the atmosphere starts to condense and form clouds. Precipitation is when those clouds condense so much that the water droplets then fall from the clouds as rain, snow, sleet, or hail, just depends on how cold it is. And then runoff is when water flows into rivers and eventually the ocean. So runoff is it's on a surface and it is just flowing off of it. And then transpiration is actually plants releasing water vapor through their leaves. So this is a graphic showing some of that process. So we have evaporation, all of the water going up, condensation into the clouds where it's in the atmosphere. Precipitation could be rain, snow, hail, whatever it may be. Infiltration here, we didn't have the previous page. It also could be called percolation, but that's when it actually infiltrates into the ground and is going to be stored in that groundwater or aquifer. And then runoff would be it running off of the surface into the ocean or lakes or just along land. So for human impact on the water cycle, the first is going to be urbanization. So urbanization is us developing, creating cities, suburbs, urban areas, whatever it may be. We are changing the landscape. So we are going to alter the natural water runoff patterns because now there's cement there instead of natural land. And then also deforestation. Remember that transpiration is where plants are releasing water through their leaves. If we don't have those trees releasing that water through their leaves, we're having less water available in that atmosphere, and it's going to affect local hydrology, so affecting the local weather, how much rain there may or may not be. And then climate change. So it alters precipitation patterns and intensifies droughts and floods. We'll talk about climate change way more in depth towards the end of the year, but climate change and global warming are not exactly the same thing. Climate change is that there is going to be a change in the climate. So when there's a change in that water cycle, a change in how much it rains or when it rains, that would fall under that umbrella. So the consequences could be droughts, it could be floods, or even water scarcity. All right, that is the end of that lesson. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in the next one.